When you have winds like 120 miles per hour at the surface, it's going to be more like 153 when you get up high. That's 28% faster. So remember, the winds at the top of a 25-story coastal high-rise are about one category higher than what you're going to find at the surface. You have a Category 4 hurricane coming into South Florida. You're talking about a Category 5 hurricane up high. Flying debris is going to be a huge problem. Pattering up against some of those high rises, you do not want to be in a high rise.
No, you don't, Nick. So not only impacts different as you go back and forth, but also up and down, whether it's wind or water. We're going to see it all. And another place that may be affected is going to be Fort Lauderdale, too. And if you live in the area, here's what you need to know. Live look right now at Fort Lauderdale, courtesy of EarthCam. Last flight left Fort Lauderdale International Airport 9 p.m. on Friday night, and they will not reopen until after the storm. So it's wide open to when we are going to see flights coming out of Fort Lauderdale or going in once again. Now let's get quickly to the radar here. Notice some of these outer bands coming in. Virginia Key had a wind gust 59 miles per hour in Miami-Dade County, thus that reported some power outages. But here's the real bulk of the hurricane now on the outer edges of Hurricane Irma as it continues to move on up toward the north. So in Fort Lauderdale, probably some squally weather coming through with occasionally some stronger storms producing wind gusts maybe to 50 or 60 miles per hour. But the more significant wind field approaching as we head on through the early morning hours on Saturday through the Keys. The hurricane force winds arrive there in Fort Lauderdale. Probably going to start seeing tropical storm force winds sustained as we go on through later Saturday night, and into Sunday morning. The arrival times of some of these tropical storm force winds, it looks like it's going to be around the evening hours as we get up near and just north of Miami, in and around Fort Lauderdale, and then moving on off toward the north. So some of those strong winds will come in and potentially be sustained at tropical storm force. It starts at 39 miles per hour. So it is going to be a squally Saturday afternoon. Your timing maybe as early as the morning hours for some of the gusts to get 40 plus miles per hour, and then the worst. And as we watch Irma make its closest approach to the east coast of Florida, the 75 mile per hour gusts or higher in this area will be Sunday morning through Sunday afternoon, and the rainfall accumulating 8 to 12 inches with that surge too on top of that of 10 feet. We will have areas underwater here out across the east coast of Florida. Once again, the rainfall totals in and around Fort Lauderdale, we're going to throw down about a foot of rainfall along with that water rise with the persistent winds coming in here off the northeast, and we will continue to have some very heavy rainfall, Nick, in South Florida. The water rise and the strong hurricane force winds and gusts is going to make it an ugly weekend.
And now we're talking about even greater impacts on the west coast of Florida as well. The Gulf Coast looking pretty dire here. Let's get a look at Tampa, a live look where mandatory evacuations have taken place for Zone A. Folks who live in Zone A, you need to be out. Mandatory evacuation. This is a storm surge warning for Tampa, and Governor Rick Scott is urging all Floridians to take the threat very seriously. So let's look once again at the hurricane warnings, and they cover a lot of area after this.
As this storm goes north, we want you to be safe, and we're going to tell you it's not going to be safe to be on the road. So we're going to do everything we can, because I want everybody in the state to survive this storm. And so we're going to put out information and try to help people make sure they make good decisions.
Yeah, that's why we're here, to make sure that you survive. So the warnings are out for hurricane force winds already. We have hurricane watches all the way from central Florida northward. Hurricane force winds could be felt throughout the entire peninsula here as we head through the next couple of days. Orlando under that hurricane watch, Jacksonville under the hurricane watch, even Tallahassee too, and of course hurricane warnings from Tampa and Naples down toward the Keys, Miami, West Palm Beach, all ready under those hurricane warnings. Here's the future radar, okay? This is a pretty good scenario here of the time, and watch the movement here. Okay, as we head on into Saturday evening, Sunday morning, we'll see more of the bulk of Irma coming into play here. And according to this model, probably the southwestern coast is where we could see the bulk of the surge problems here. So renewed threats here for very big surge along the southwestern coast, and of course that's an area already vulnerable to high water whenever you have a landfalling tropical system. Then it continues to move northward here. Notice the rainfall covering the entire Florida peninsula. It's a gigantic storm on up into Georgia as well. So 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts could be felt by Sunday morning in Tampa all the way through Monday morning. Those hurricane force winds are going to be Sunday evening through Monday morning. The rainfall is going to be upwards to half a foot and more, 5 to 8 inches possible, and storm surge up to 5 feet. Here's where we could see some of the heaviest rainfall amounts. We're talking about St. Petersburg, maybe 6, 7 inches, around Tampa, 9, 10 inches of rainfall, 11 inches once you move inland, and we continue to see more moisture from that. Let's talk about Pinellas County, Zone A, and mobile homes. Mandatory evacuations have already taken place. That's the red areas, so you need to be out. If you are near the water, whether it's the Gulf side or the Bay side, you need to be out and away. And of course, in any zone here around Pinellas County, if you're in a mobile home, you need to get out of that mobile home, get to a shelter, get northward to safety. So again, this is going to be a big surge threat here on the west side, Ray, and it looks like just one of the many threats.
Yeah, it is. And Nick, it's probably a good idea to explain that surge. And we do have a new graphic that, well, we can help explain what surge actually is. And the numbers really don't sound all that high when you hear about single-digit storm surge. But this is what we mean by surge or water rise. And it is from the ground. It is how high the water will be in any one given point. So let's say you're forecast to have a surge of 1 to 3 feet potential. 6 inches of water can actually stall an engine of a car. 2 feet of running water can actually carry a car away in most vehicles. So some of these areas that are not only have structures but cars in and around these areas, with 2 or 3 feet of surge, you could start washing cars away. And we are expected to see large areas that also have power outages because you're going to have water running into a lot of buildings. Now, let's go to 3 to 6 foot of surge. This is life-threatening. Trees, buildings, and material and debris can act as battering rams, and you may reach halfway up the front door of some structures. As you notice here, if you're up between the 3 to 6 foot range, this is fairly significant surge, and what we are expecting in many places out across the south and southern parts of Florida. Now we get to the 6 to 9 foot surge, we are reaching above the first floor in many homes and businesses. Major damage, building destruction possible, and the storm surge can also extend miles inland. So if you are in some of these surge areas and you're expecting 6 to 9 feet of surge, the best advice right now is to get out of town. We'll have more coming up with full coverage of Irma right after the break. We're getting some strong wording from the National Weather Service office in Key West, Florida. This is as real as it gets. Nowhere in the Florida Keys will be safe, and we're already starting to get some tropical storm force wind gusts in the Keys, 42 miles per hour, with some of the outer bands starting to work their way in. Welcome back to continuing coverage of Hurricane Irma, and Irma's track has shifted to the west in the last 24 hours. That's bringing new concern to people living along Florida's Gulf Coast. NBC's Kristen Dahlgren shows us how the alarm is growing and how both coasts of Florida brace for a disaster.
Along Florida's west coast tonight, there is new urgency. What many thought was a miss now has models shifting this way.
We're not as far away from the center as we had originally thought.
Grace and Frank Mazzarella scrambling to finish storm preps on Sanibel Island.
My family wants us out of Florida totally, but that's a little bit difficult to do right now with traffic. Airlines are all booked up.
Officials going door to door to make sure residents, especially the most vulnerable, weren't lulled into a sense of security.
I'm just thinking about my family, my wife, puppy.
The biggest issue here may be the storm surge, a wall of water coming ashore, leaving all of these low-lying homes underwater. Search and rescue teams are ready for anyone who doesn't get out in time.
Pretty much anything that's going to help us gain access to something or someone is on this vehicle.
Route 75, the major highway on Florida's west coast, is backed up for miles. Gas supplies are dwindling. Some places are running out of sandbags. The Velos family from Port Charlotte is evacuating, but couldn't find a place to go.
All the hotels in Gainesville, Ocala, and Lake City, all of them were booked. So there was not a room available, so we had to sleep in a rest area with our kids.
While others can only hope they didn't wait too long.
By the grace of God, we'll survive again.
Well, in addition to the rain, the wind, the surge threats, we're also going to see a severe weather threat, which often accompanies a landfalling tropical system, and Irma will be no exception. Tornadoes are very possible through Florida as we head through your Saturday. Let's take a look right now where Irma is, and it's skirting the coast of Cuba. It actually made landfall on the north coast. There's the eye, continuing to move off toward the west, but we're already beginning to see some of these outer bands making their way into South Florida. They've been producing some thunderstorms and some gusty winds around the Miami area. We've actually had reports of even a few power outages with those initial thunderstorms too. There'll be a whole lot more where that came from as we get through your Saturday and as these bands of rain and thunderstorms move in. So the thunderstorm forecast for today includes basically almost all of the peninsula, from Miami and the Keys northward up toward Jacksonville, and the tornado threats are very real, especially here in South Florida. An 8 in 10 chance of seeing a tornado on Saturday, a 5 in 10 chance in east central Florida, and then a 4 in 10 chance here in the northeastern part of the state. This is because we have